there are an estimated 170,000 unwanted horses in the United States alone, according to the Unwanted Horse Coalition. My goal with this speech today is to persuade the audience that slaughterhouses are ethical and needed, and that they need to be brought back to the United States. I'm credible to speak on this topic because I have done research on it. I want the public to know that although slaughterhouses seem like a horrible option, they're really not. With this many horses in one country, it's hard to think of options for them. Many welfare groups have tried to ban slaughter for years because it's inhumane, but in reality, it's really not. The reason I picked this topic is because I saw a Facebook post titled, "Rethinking the Ethics of Animal Rescue." This article was about an old horse and an old man who had dementia. The old man's plan was always to either put his horse down or sell him to a slaughterhouse before he got too bad and had to go to assisted living. But it happened too fast before he could get anything in writing. And when he had to leave, his horse was left without an owner. This old horse went to a rescue, which seemed like a great idea until the horse got there and they didn't have enough time, money, or space for him. He ended up going through a sale and ended up in a Mexican slaughterhouse, which are not regulated. When he got there, he was in an overcrowded pen with no fresh, clean water and very little food. It was a terrible end to his life because there was no other option in the United States for him. My main points today are going to be talking about horses' lives, how to care for them, their retirement, and their options after retirement. My first point is their performance life. My dad has been training horses for years, so I'll be using him as a source throughout this article and in this section. Most horses begin their careers around 2 to 3 years old, and once they begin competing, they'll do so for as long as their bodies allow. Sometimes this can only be a few years, and sometimes this can be until they're well into their 20s. These horses can win thousands of dollars, but if they do end up getting a career-ending injury, a lot of them are just sold off for very cheap because there's no use for them anymore. My next point will be care. SouthernStates.com, which is a website with many agricultural articles, says that performance horses are athletes and should be treated as such. As with any athlete, they can have career-ending injuries, and this is not as big of a deal for the really outstanding ones because they're usually insured for the amount that they were paid for or for their estimated worth due to their breeding and earnings. But for normal athletes, these injuries are much more concerning. Run-of-the-mill athletes are often just pawned off after a bad injury because there's no use for them. These horses are the ones who end up in rescues who are too full to provide the proper care, which means they end up sold into unregulated slaughterhouses or off to somebody who doesn't know how to take care of them. My next point is retirement. As horses get to retirement age, there are a couple options. Some end up with little kids who spoil them. Some are turned out in a green pasture, but that's not always the case. Older horses come with health issues just like any other animal, and that can be very costly. EquiSearch lists out several issues older horses have and some ways to take care of it, like arthritis, weight issues, and some diseases. Many owners cannot afford to take care of older horses, or they don't really want to, so they're sold off. They're sold off at a cheap price because they're old and usually cannot be ridden. So that's not ideal because they usually end up in a slaughterhouse that is not in the United States, therefore it is not regulated nor humane, just like the old horse in the Facebook article. My final point will be options for after retirement. avma.org has a whole web page dedicated to these options, but to make it simple, there are really only a few. Just like I said before, they can either end up living out their life in a pasture or end up in a rescue, or being sent to an unregulated slaughterhouse. These rescues do have good intentions, but there are just too many animals for the amount of space. They're not like dogs and cats where you can cram them into smaller areas. They're large animals and they need room to roam. In conclusion, regulated and humane slaughterhouses need to be brought back to the United States because the United States will keep them humane. The bottom line is that there simply isn't enough room for all of these animals, so the public either needs to step up and become more responsible or accept that slaughter is the most humane option for many of these animals. I've presented you with several facts regarding my main points of the performance life of a horse, their care, retirement, and options for the end. Today I've given you evidence that will persuade you that slaughterhouses need to be brought back to the United States because they are ethical and they do serve a great purpose.